Welcome, esteemed ones. Be mindful of the company you keep. Some individuals carry repercussions you can't afford. Resilient souls allow me to illustrate. There are those right now trembling in apprehension, not because you raised your voice, not because you resorted to violence, but because they have finally recognized you are not one to be trifled with repeatedly. Apprehension possesses a peculiar dynamic. Scientific evidence even demonstrates that when an individual experiences profound terror, their body secretes a hormone known as cortisol, which literally corrodes them from within. And this is precisely what is transpiring within them at this moment. Their own autonomic system is exacting retribution for their audacity in perceiving you as vulnerable. Herein lies the unforeseen suspense. What they believe to be an innocuous game of duplicity has metamorphosed into a waking nightmare that torments their sleep. And in all candor, it borders on the farcical when one contemplates it. They conspired against you, mocked you, and even wrote you off. Yet now they are incapable of even counting sheep at night without quaking at the prospect of what may befall them. This transcends mere retribution. This is the universe enacting a cautionary tale, instructing them that when they assailed you, they assailed something inviolable, something fortified by cosmic principles. And now they would not even entertain the notion of attempting to provoke you again. The dread they experience is not solely about you. It is about the realization that they are ignorant of when the hammer will fall, only that its descent is already underway. Therefore, listen attentively, because what we are about to unveil will not only explicate why they are trembling, but also why their apprehension is irrefutable evidence that you have already triumphed. Firstly, their apprehension is not of you. It is of what you awaken within them. They are not apprehensive of you because of your capacity for vociferousness or because of any menace you may have articulated. The apprehension emanates from something considerably deeper, something from which they cannot evade, what you stir within their very core. Each time they behold you, hear your appellation, or even contemplate you, their own reflection manifests. And it is not the rendition of themselves that they prefer to exhibit to the world. You need not enumerate their transgressions, for your very existence compels them to confront the shadow they have striven to conceal their entire lives. This is why they tremble. You become the embodiment of everything they desperately seek to keep cloaked. Individuals of this nature subsist on projection. They flourish by imputing blame onto others, pointing accusatory fingers and generating cacophony to obscure the verity of their true selves. However, when they encounter someone who cannot be deceived by this charade, someone whose presence silently exposes them without uttering a single word, it terrifies them because they can no longer elude the inner voice that whispers. They perceive you. That is the facet they dread, the exposure that does not stem from calumny or reprisal, but from the undeniable aura you emanate that causes dissimulation to crumble upon sight. It is one thing to be disliked. It is an entirely different matter to feel exposed. That is the inherent power you possess even without conscious effort. You need not engage in disputation with them, for your personal evolution already invalidates every falsehood they disseminated about you. You need not offer a rejoinder, for the manner in which you have healed and metamorphosed is irrefutable evidence that their assaults were incapable of halting your progress. And this is precisely why they are uneasy. They can no longer distort this narrative. You are living testament that their account of the story is irrevocably flawed, and they are cognizant that once others perceive you for your authentic self, their entire artifice will come crashing down. The trembling they experience is not a manifestation of weakness, it is panic. It is the realization that you cannot be manipulated, you cannot be provoked, and you cannot be reshaped into their fabrication. And the truth is, regardless of the duration for which they attempt to flee you, have already indelibly imprinted upon their conscience. You have become the mirror they did not solicit, yet one from which they can never avert their gaze. And that particular form of apprehension never dissipates. Secondly, they perceived you as merely flesh, but you moved with the force of law. They presumed you were merely another individual, whom they could mistreat, test, or manipulate for their own amusement. In their estimation, you were merely flesh and blood, easily provoked, easily manipulated. Someone they could address in the same manner they address all others. What they failed to comprehend is that you do not function on the same plane as ordinary individuals. When they came against you, they were not merely initiating a conflict with a person. They were colliding with a principle, with a spiritual decree that cannot be bent, broken, or suborned. That is why they are now apprehensive, because they perceive that what envelops you is not merely strength of will, but something transcendent that ensures that whatever is perpetrated against you ultimately rebounds upon them. That is what distinguishes you. Human reprisal is predictable. Individuals yell, they retaliate. They divulge secrets, they seek vengeance in ways for which one can prepare. However, with you there is no formula, no timetable, no safe haven. You need not retaliate, for the law that governs your existence executes the task on your behalf. And this is what they underestimated. They assumed their assaults would land, that their manipulations would endure, that their falsehoods would take root. Instead, every single action they directed against you has metamorphosed into a weight dragging them down. It terrifies them because they now comprehend that you do not engage in equitable combat. Not because you are malevolent, but because you need not even sully your hands. The very essence of your existence realigns circumstances in your favor, irrespective of whether you utter a word. That is why your presence feels oppressive to them. They sense something beyond you that stands sentinel, something that renders it perilous to tamper with your destiny. They can ridicule individuals, mock individuals, even ruin individuals. However, with you, they have realized that the risk is excessively high. That is the apprehension with which they now reside. It is not apprehension of your retaliation. It is apprehension of divine retribution, apprehension of the consequences from which no amount of cunning or manipulation can escape. They are cognizant of what they have perpetrated, and they are cognizant that they have transgressed a boundary that does not easily forgive or forget. They did not merely offend you, they offended the order that surrounds you. And once an individual learns that your existence is shielded by law, not by mere chance, they will never again attempt to provoke you, for to do so is to initiate a conflict with the very forces that maintain the equilibrium of the world. Thirdly, their apprehension stems from the realization that they cannot control the narrative. For those who subsist on deception, control is paramount. They subsist by distorting narratives, portraying themselves as the protagonists while depicting others as the antagonists. They have resided comfortably within a world they constructed from manipulation, where their pronouncements could mold how others perceived reality. However, they have now encountered a truth they cannot rewrite you. And this is the source of their apprehension. They have realized that regardless of how profusely they fabricate your existence, itself has become incontrovertible evidence. They cannot distort it, they cannot bury it, and they cannot control the narrative any longer. When an individual depends on falsehoods to preserve their image, truth becomes their most formidable adversary. The very fact that you remain standing, thriving, and ascending despite everything they perpetrated renders their account of events absurd. They informed others that you would not succeed, yet here you are. They informed others that you were inconsequential. Yet your personal evolution continues to demonstrate otherwise. And with each step forward, you undertake their meticulously constructed narrative fractures incrementally. That is the kind of exposure for which they never planned. The kind that does not necessitate your words to dismantle their narrative. It terrifies them because once they relinquish control of the narrative, they relinquish power over others. Their falsehoods were only efficacious when others believed them. However, now others are beginning to perceive for themselves. The disparity between who they declared you to be and who you truly are is too conspicuous to disregard. That is why they are restless. It is not merely apprehension of you. It is apprehension of everyone else awakening to the verity they have concealed for so long. And the most arduous aspect for them is that they cannot impede this unraveling. Falsehoods possess an expiration date, whereas truth does not. They are cognizant that the clock is ticking, and each passing second renders their mask more difficult to maintain in place. They perceive the weight of exposure pressing down upon them, and it is corroding their confidence. Their trembling does not stem from your menaces. It stems from the realization that the menace was never you at all. The menace was the truth you embody and the fact that irrespective of how assiduously they attempt, they can no longer bend reality to conform to their falsehoods. That is why they will never entertain the notion of attempting to provoke you again. The cost is excessively high for once truth takes center stage. Falsehoods do not merely crumble, they vanish entirely. Fourthly, you have become their unwelcome instructor. They did not anticipate learning anything from you. In their estimation, you were supposed to be diminutive, manageable, something they could dominate and manipulate without consequence. However, life possesses a propensity for reversing fortunes. And now, without even raising your voice, you have become their lesson. Each misstep they perpetrated against you, each attempt to undermine or belittle you has metamorphosed into material for their own undoing. You did not need to lecture, argue, or substantiate a point. Your very existence is the curriculum, and they are compelled to attend whether they desire to do so or not. Each sleepless night, each anxious moment, each fear-driven thought they experience is a tutorial in humility for which they did not register. They are learning incrementally that the world does not yield to their schemes when they assail someone inviolable. Their own stratagems, their falsehoods, and their manipulations are now instructing them in the most challenging lesson of all. The more they attempt to exert control, the more they expose themselves. They are discovering the weight of actions they once deemed innocuous, and they are paying tuition in stress, paranoia, and regret. You did not need to orchestrate their suffering. They engendered it themselves. Your power does not reside in reprisal, it resides in their exposure. They are beholding consequences they never foresaw, compelled to confront their failures in real time, and it is molding them in ways they cannot disregard. The lesson is unambiguous and relentless. When an individual transgresses against the inviolable, when they test the incorrect person, the fallout is inevitable and it invariably entails a cost. They are learning respect the arduous way because respect is not bestowed upon those who demand it. It is earned, and it is frequently imparted by consequences rather than by pronouncements. Your presence has become the instructor they did not desire but cannot escape. And each time they replay what they perpetrated, each time their conscience reminds them of the verity, they are once again seated in class learning the same lesson repetitively. Testing someone inviolable is a gamble that never concludes in their favor. Their apprehension, their anxiety, their sleepless nights. This is your silent syllabus, and they are destined to study it until they ultimately comprehend the profundity of what they challenged. Fifthly, you carry consequences they cannot calculate. Adversaries feel at ease when they can predict the ramifications of their actions. They comprehend human reactions. They are cognizant that anger, confrontation, calumny, and reprisal possess limits. However, with you, the equation shifts entirely. You carry consequences that cannot be measured by conventional precepts, actions that unfold with precision beyond human comprehension. They may plan, plot, and scheme, believing they can calculate every response. However, what you introduce into the world operates on a plane they cannot anticipate. That uncertainty terrifies them more than any disputation, insult, or physical confrontation ever could. The apprehension they experience does not concern what you will perpetrate in the moment. It concerns what life, fate, or cosmic law will perpetrate on your behalf, frequently without your intervention. They cannot measure timing, method, or magnitude. They cannot ascertain whether the impact will occur immediately or years hence, directly or indirectly, quietly or explosively. Every plan they devise entails a concealed risk they cannot foresee, a consequence lurking in shadows of whose existence they were unaware. That unknown is poison to their confidence, a perpetual reminder that they are never in complete control. The more they attempt to rationalize it, the more profound their apprehension becomes. They cannot predict the instruments of their downfall. Occasionally it is an individual. Occasionally it is a circumstance. Occasionally it is a concatenation of events that appears entirely coincidental but is perfectly aligned with the consequences of their actions. They may attempt to manipulate, suborn, or intimidate, but it is of no consequence. Your existence is governed by principles beyond human calculation, and that is precisely what keeps them awake at night. Apprehension of the unpredictable is far more potent than apprehension of the obvious. They are haunted by scenarios that may or may not transpire, replaying choices and outcomes within their minds, unable to rest, because each misstep against you constitutes a potential trigger for a reckoning they cannot evade. That dread is evidence of your power. You need not strike or substantiate anything. They are already cognizant of the weight of what they attempted, and the uncertainty of when or how consequences will strike constitutes the most terrifying punishment of all. Sixthly, they finally perceive that you were never playing the same game. They invariably presumed you played by their precepts, that you would react as everyone else does, angrily, defensively, desperately attempting to substantiate yourself. While they were engrossed in pettiness, attempting to manipulate, deceive, or ensnare you, you were operating on an entirely disparate plane. Your maneuvers were not predicated on competition, reprisal, or establishing dominance. They were predicated on purpose, strategy, and lucidity. Each action they undertook, each falsehood they disseminated, each scheme they plotted was being observed, noted, and catalogued without emotion or attachment. Your silence was not weakness. It was a form of power they never comprehended. They believed that reacting expeditiously, exhibiting anger or frustration would maintain your vulnerability. But they miscalculated. While they squandered energy on chaos, you were building resilience, documenting patterns, and preparing for the inevitable exposure of their schemes. Your composure was not emptiness. It was presence, focus, and unshakable awareness. Everything they believed they concealed from the world was already being recorded in your mind and in the manner in which you navigated existence. They did not perceive the invisible ledger being inscribed with each attempt to undermine you. Now they are beginning to perceive the cost of underestimating you. The evidence of their own actions, their falsehoods, their manipulations, their deceit, is embedded within the very reality they assisted in creating. The more they attempt to justify themselves or rewrite history, the clearer it becomes that the narrative is arrayed against them, inscribed not by pronouncements, but by consequences they never anticipated. Your silence has become more sonorous than any accusation, your composure stronger than any menace, and their downfall unavoidable because it is constructed on their own actions, observed and catalogued by someone they believed they could control. This is the moment when panic ensues. The moment they realize they were never playing the same game as you. They were playing a short-term, superficial strategy. You were playing the long-term game of truth, consequence, and presence. The patterns they believed were concealed are now exposed, and the very energy they attempted to manipulate has turned against them. They finally comprehend that what they deemed weakness was actually precision, and what they deemed ordinary was inviolable. And the apprehension that grips them now is not merely apprehension of you. It is apprehension of the reality they assisted in constructing and the fact that they underestimated a force they can no longer predict or control. Seventhly, they are apprehensive because you are no longer accessible. The apprehension they now experience emanates from a simple yet potent truth. You are no longer within their reach. Individuals who flourish on control subsist on accessibility. They necessitate the ability to manipulate, to provoke, to bend others to their will. They believed they could reach you at any time, distort your emotions, and draw you back into their chaos whenever it suited their purposes. However, now that accessibility is gone, you are no longer available to their schemes, and that lack of control terrifies them more than any confrontation ever could. They flourished on the illusion that they could influence your choices, dictate your emotions, and gauge your reactions. Each falsehood they disseminated, each manipulation they attempted, was predicated on the presumption that you could be reached, that they could draw you into their orbit. However, now the orbit has shifted and you have moved beyond it. The doors through which they previously traversed freely are now closed and the keys are gone. The sensation of being locked out, of possessing no influence, ignites an apprehension they have never truly experienced. This apprehension does not merely concern losing you. It concerns losing control over their own narrative. They counted on your reactions to validate their power, to affirm their schemes. Now, without accessibility to you, that validation is gone. They are compelled to confront the fact that the person they attempted to dominate cannot be reached, cannot be manipulated, and cannot be bent to their will. The panic emanates from the realization that their power was invariably dependent on your availability. And now, it is meaningless. Each attempt to regain control becomes a reminder of their helplessness. They pound on doors that will never open, replaying stratagems that no longer function, and realizing that their influence has expired. The emptiness they experience is amplified because you are inviolable, unreachable, and firmly beyond the reach of their control. That is the form of apprehension that keeps them awake at night. The apprehension of irrelevance, the apprehension of loss, the apprehension of having underestimated someone who learned how to close the gates and shield themselves completely. In relinquishing accessibility to you, they are compelled to confront the ultimate verity. You are no longer theirs to touch, no longer theirs to manipulate, and no longer theirs to control. And that reality shakes them more profoundly than any menace ever could. Eighthly, their reputation is melting under your existence alone. They can hurl all the insults, disseminate all the rumors, and construct all the false narratives they desire, but none of it takes root when your existence continues to ascend above their chaos. They did not anticipate that your personal evolution alone would dismantle every falsehood they ever disseminated. You did not need to confront them, argue, or substantiate anything. Merely by existing, by thriving, you exposed the cracks in the narrative they attempted to inscribe about you. Their reputation, which they meticulously constructed on manipulation and deceit, begins to crumble the moment others perceive the verity reflected in your existence. Each success you attain, each step forward you undertake, is a silent indictment of their falsehoods. What they stated about you, the manner in which they attempted to diminish you, becomes ludicrous in the light of your accomplishments. They cannot distort it, they cannot conceal it, and they cannot argue against it. Their apprehension is not engendered by what you perpetrate upon them. It is engendered by what you simply are. You are living evidence that their pronouncements were empty, their claims were false, and their attempts to control perception were futile. That apprehension is contagious. Those surrounding them begin to perceive the contrast between the image they have projected and the reality of your existence. Each time someone witnesses your success, integrity, or composure, it is akin to a fissure forming within their meticulously constructed facade. They are compelled to watch as their falsehoods collapse without anyone needing to utter a single word. And that is terrifying. They are not apprehensive of you assailing them. They are apprehensive of what your existence already reveals. That they have expended time undermining someone who was inviolable all along. The more you thrive, the more rapidly their credibility fades. Their calumny, their attempts to control narratives, their petty judgments, all of it loses weight against the undeniable evidence of your existence. What previously appeared to be power now appears to be weakness. What previously appeared to be influence now appears to be irrelevance. You did not need to expose them with a confrontation because exposure does not invariably necessitate pronouncements. Occasionally, personal evolution is more sonorous than any accusation, and survival speaks with a force that apprehension alone cannot silence. Your existence alone has become the evidence of their failure, the silent dismantling of their authority, and the source of their deepest unease. They are watching, trembling, realizing that the reality of you is a menace that their falsehoods can never overcome. Ninthly, they have realized you cannot be baited into destruction. They believed they had you figured out. Each pronouncement, each maneuver, each reaction was anticipated and catalogued. They set traps designed to provoke anger, to elicit defensiveness, to push you into a corner where you would possess no recourse but to prove them incorrect. They depended on your emotions to validate their schemes, believing that the more you reacted, the more they controlled the narrative. However, you did not play into it. You did not accept the bait, and that is what terrifies them the most. Their entire strategy was constructed around the presumption that you were predictable, that your responses could be manipulated, and that your strength was conditional. By refusing to engage on their terms, you flipped the script entirely. The trap they so meticulously constructed became their own prison. Each insult, each falsehood, each manipulation now loops back on them because it no longer elicits the reaction for which they counted. They are trapped in the chaos they created, and they possess no means of escape. The apprehension emanates from the realization that they are now powerless within the cycle they initiated. While they believed they were the hunters, they are the ones ensnared in a web of their own design. Their attempts to provoke you into error, to draw you into a public confrontation, or to shame you into compliance all backfired. So to wrap it all up, remember this: the discomfort others feel around you when they've acted poorly isn't about you at all. It's about the truth you reflect back to them, the consequences they can't escape, and the realization that you're operating on a completely different level. You've already won simply by being your authentic, resilient self. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Have you experienced anything similar? Leave a comment below and let's get a conversation going. And if this resonated with you, please hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on future insights and inspiration. I look forward to connecting with you all, ding with you all, ding with you all, ding with you all.